In 1991, fully 20 years after the legendary Pong had been released to the world, a senior at the University of Chicago named Alex Seropian wrote his own version of it for the Mac. He cleverly titled it Gnop, Pong spelled backwards, and decided to release it for free as a company instead of as himself. After much thought, he settled on a name, and so young Alex found himself with a game with zero revenue. It was, after all, free, and his own company. He called it Bungie. Why he called it Bungie is a closely guarded secret to this day, with various conflicting rumors swirling around. Whatever the reason, later that year, Seropian released his real pet project, Operation Desert Storm, thus entering the commercial gaming market. It was based on the war going on, though Seropian would later claim it was the other way around, with Saddam Hussein's head being the final boss. Bungie at the time was developing exclusively for the Mac, partially because the Mac gaming market wasn't as crowded as the Windows one, and partially because Seropian knew the Mac and was too lazy to learn anything else. The game was self-distributed on floppy disks Seropian had stolen during a summer internship at Microsoft. Sadly, the game only sold about 2,500 copies, but for a one-man company operated out of a basement, that's not too bad. Still at UChicago, Seropian learned that one of his classmates had almost finished a game of his own, and decided to bring him on board. Thus, Jason Jones became the proud second employee of Bungie Software, and Seropian helped Jones finish his adventure game Minotaur in 1992. While the game wasn't any more of a success than Operation Desert Storm had been, it was notable for being a very early adopter of networked multiplayer gaming, a philosophy that would serve Bungie well down the road. In 1993, with the guys now out of college and actually trying to make it as a company, they released Pathways into Darkness. Something of a combo between an FPS and an RPG, the game was a multi-award winner and Bungie's first real success. It grew Bungie's small but already dedicated fan base by quite a bit, and made them enough money to start work on a larger scale game. The result of that money and effort was called Marathon, which was released in December 1994. Marathon was an FPS, but for its time had one of the most in-depth storylines yet developed. It also boasted an advanced physics engine, and introduced vertical aiming to the world. Of course, network multiplayer was featured again, this time with maps built specifically for multiplayer, an industry first. Marathon was a runaway success and turned Bungie into a dominant Mac platform developer overnight. Marathon was followed by two equally successful sequels, and Bungie began to grow in size and ability, developing cross-platform games and even briefly having a separate publisher division. Deciding to switch gears completely, Bungie's next title was Myth, a real-time tactics fantasy game in which players took control of groups of soldiers and tried to outthink their enemy. Once again innovating in the online arena, Bungie became the first developer to host its own dedicated multiplayer server, Bungie.net.
Another villager, a small girl not yet old enough for the fields, said that she had seen brigands take her father and a few others in the direction of that trail.
This made multiplayer gaming in Myth markedly easier than in other games on the market, since all the trouble of setting up and maintaining network connections was handled by Bungie instead of the players. Myth was another commercial success and was soon followed by a sequel cleverly titled Myth 2. Myth 2 sold well, but ended up forcing Bungie to issue a $1 million recall because a bug in the code was wiping entire hard drives clean. In the late 90s, the company went through a number of changes. It opened a second division, Bungie West, which released the action game Oni, and immediately closed. Then in 1999, Bungie proved itself to be one of the very top echelon of Mac game developers when Steve Jobs introduced Halo at that year's Macworld Expo. The game was to be cross-platform on both Mac and Windows, and was selected by Jobs as one of the shining examples of the Mac's graphical ability. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, a call from Microsoft would soon change all that. Tune in next time to see how Halo went from Mac demo to console smash.